Why won't you talk to me? I asked. I've decided not to talk to people I don't know. I understand. I'll go away. Living with my husband's parents, they completely ignored me. I thought my mother-in-law might ignore me, but I never expected my father-in-law to treat me the same way. There was a reason why they changed. It was because my sister-in-law, who didn't like me, came back home. Since she returned, our peaceful life together turned upside down. Don't regret it, okay? You think I'll regret leaving? Think again, meanie. I packed my things and left my in-laws' house. Just 3 days after I left, there was chaos in their home. I met my husband at work. He worked in sales and often came to my office, and I was his main contact. As we spent more time together in meetings, I started to like him. He was caring and kind, tall, and not exactly what you'd call handsome, but he had a charming personality. He was well liked, but for some reason, he said he liked me, and we started dating. When we talked, he told me he grew up in a normal family with parents and a sister. I lost my parents when I was young and grew up in an orphanage. It was a hard thing for me, but when we started dating, I told him about my past. He said, "That sounds tough, but don't worry, I'll always be here for you." Not long after, he asked me to marry him. He always wanted our relationship to lead to marriage and quickly introduced me to his parents. When I told them about growing up in the orphanage, they listened carefully and reassured me it wouldn't affect our marriage. It made me really happy. They even said that my background didn't matter in becoming their daughter-in-law, which made me feel really good. But my sister-in-law, who was very close to her brother, seemed surprised, asking, "You grew up in an orphanage?" My husband had to scold her. Looking back, she probably didn't like me from the start. I didn't think much of it then, just assuming we were still getting to know each other. Before we got married, my husband and I talked about moving in with his parents. We thought about it seriously, but I decided to keep my job. My husband was going to be transferred soon, and although I considered quitting to move with him, my career was going well, and I had just been given more responsibilities at work. We discussed it and agreed he would move alone. After our wedding, I wanted to enjoy being newlyweds for a while. I even thought about visiting my husband during long weekends to have a May vacation together. Moving in with my in-laws right after getting married seemed a bit overwhelming, but my husband probably felt more comfortable living with them. Also, he might have wanted us to live together to ease his mom's worries. Since I lost my parents when I was young, I always wished for a family, so living with them didn't seem entirely bad. Besides, my in-laws had always been nice to me, and I grew to like them. It was tough juggling work and my role as a daughter-in-law, but having a family made me happy and complete. One day, my father-in-law came to me with a surprising request. It was the beginning of some trouble in our seemingly happy living arrangement. It happened when my usually anxious mother-in-law, who often acted bossy towards my father-in-law, was out shopping. I was getting ready to do some cleaning on my day off when my father-in-law asked to talk to me. "What's up?" "Well, I don't want my wife to find out, but I need to take time off from work." "Time off?" I asked, surprised. He explained that he'd been having problems with his boss and co-workers, and his health had gotten so bad that he had no choice but to take a break. My mother-in-law is a nice person, but she's always anxious and a bit overworried. Living with them, I notice how she tends to fret a lot, and my father-in-law walked on eggshells around her to avoid upsetting her. He had always been on the thin side, but lately I realized he seemed to have lost some weight. It would have been nice if my mother-in-law genuinely cared about my father-in-law's weight loss. But when he took a sick day because of a cold before, she said, "A cold? Everyone else at work is climbing the career ladder. You're always taking days off for health reasons. That's why you're not getting promoted." Instead of being concerned, she tended to criticize him. He probably tried his best to keep going, no matter how bad he felt. But his health got worse, and he secretly took time off to go to the hospital. He was struggling both mentally and physically. With him leaving work early, often being late, and calling in sick, there was talk about him needing to take a break from work. But he didn't want to upset my mother-in-law at any cost. If he suggested taking time off, she'd likely get really angry. Also, my father-in-law didn't earn much, and he relied on extra pay from working overtime. Taking time off would mean a significant drop in income. If he told my husband, he might tell my mother-in-law, so he came to me, asking if I could help with the bills. If I mentioned taking a break, she might even leave me, he said. Hearing that hurt. I was grateful to my in-laws who had accepted me warmly, regardless of my past in an orphanage. Wanting to support him, I decided to help him out during this tough time. Okay, I'll send you money every month. Use it for expenses. I'm really sorry. I'll try to get better soon and go back to work. Thank you so much. After that, my father-in-law continued to pretend to go to work while I sent money to his bank account for living expenses. My mother-in-law wasn't very thorough with checking her bank statements, so she didn't notice my transfers. He'd act like he was going to work but instead went to a mental health clinic or went for walks in the peaceful mountains. Over time, he started looking better. I thought he might go back to work soon, but then something unexpected happened. After a fight with her husband, my sister-in-law went back to her parents' home. There's nothing like being back home. I thought I'd lose my mind if I stayed with that stupid husband of mine. I'll be here for a while. Can you make meals for me too? I knew from the start that my sister-in-law didn't like me. At our first family meeting, my husband was upset because she clearly showed her disapproval. During our wedding, she had a sour look the whole time and even told me straight out, "My brother looks great, but you. He could have married someone prettier." She openly judged me for being raised at an institution, saying it was embarrassing that I didn't have parents at the wedding. However, she got married before us and had already moved out, so I thought I wouldn't have to deal with her much. That's why I thought it would be okay to live with them. If she had still been living at home, I wouldn't have even considered moving in, knowing how she would treat me every day. I thought her stay was just temporary because of her marriage problems and expected her to leave in a few days. Even though she was stern with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law had never been harsh towards me. Even if my sister-in-law made mean comments, I believed my mother-in-law would defend me. But I was wrong. One day, when I came back from work, my mother-in-law's behavior seemed strange. "Is something bothering you?" I asked. She seemed distant, not talking to me like usual. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Did you know you've been talking about me behind my back?" "What? I've never said anything bad about you. You've always been kind to me, and I'm really thankful. Why would I say bad things about you? You've been acting like the perfect daughter-in-law, but you've been talking behind my back." "Whatever," she said, leaving the room. In the hallway, my sister-in-law was smirking. "Looks like you're not in her good books anymore. Did your true colors come out? Being from an orphanage, your background really does matter, huh? It's best not to gossip about people, you know." "I haven't said anything bad about her." "Oh, the neighbors seem to have heard everything. When I came back home after so long, they told me you've been talking badly about her all the time." "What? Who are these neighbors?" "Well, it's been a while since I got married and moved out, so I kind of forgot their names." "I never said any of that. Stop making things up." "Oh, how disrespectful. Mom, she's calling me a liar and being mean to me," my sister-in-law said as she walked into my mother-in-law's room. After that, my sister-in-law's mean behavior got worse. She claimed I told her to sleep in the hallway and take the last turn for a bath because she's just a guest. She complained to my mother-in-law about every little thing. Every time, I had to explain I hadn't said or done any of it. But my mother-in-law seemed to believe my sister-in-law and be influenced by her. My sister-in-law stayed longer, making me wonder if she planned to stay forever. With all these worries, I went home feeling sad. I'm back. Before, my mother-in-law would warmly say, "Welcome back," but now it was quiet. "I'll start making dinner," I said, stepping into the living room. I was surprised. Usually, my sister-in-law would rush me to make dinner, but now my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were eating sushi together. Surprised, my sister-in-law said, "Oh, looks like someone who isn't really family is here. You were planning on having sushi, were you?" My mother-in-law kept eating without looking at me, watching TV. "If you wanted sushi, you should have told me. I came home right after shopping," I said. "Ha! No one said they wanted that," my sister-in-law replied, not even looking at me. "Hey, Mom, Dad, I went out with my friends during the day and got some delicious pudding. Let's eat together," my sister-in-law said, ignoring me. They all started eating the pudding. I was tired from work and didn't have the energy to argue, so I went to my room without eating. The next day, my sister-in-law said she was going out with friends and asked me to drive her to the station. I said no because it was a weekday and I had work. Even if we were going in the same direction, it was a different route, and she wanted to leave around noon. I couldn't do it. "Just take the day off. It's fine. Your cute little sis-in-law just wants a ride. She hasn't had a chance to relax since she got married, right? Can't you be a bit nicer to her now?" she said. With all due respect, didn't you go out with friends last night after getting a late call? It seems like you've been going out almost every day since you came home. I have work. Please take the bus or train. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were talking quietly, but I was done and left for work. However, that night, the event that made me decide to leave this house happened. I got delayed at work and came home after buying groceries, expecting to face some criticism. It was raining heavily when I left the office, and I got soaked just getting in and out of the car. I wondered what nasty surprise was waiting for me tonight. But when I got home, they were all eating takeout again, just like the day before. No hello, acting like they didn't see me. But I was used to it. I looked out into the courtyard from the hallway and saw something in the middle of the garden. Looking closer, I saw it was my stuff. My designer bag that I bought with my first paycheck, shoes that were a birthday gift from my husband, and even my work computer, all wet. I was shocked, and my sister-in-law said with a smirk, "Having the strangers' things in the house grossed me out, so I threw them out." Flaunting a designer bag like that, how arrogant of you. Neither of my in-laws said anything about her terrible behavior. Why didn't you stop her? Have I done something to you? Do you really believe her lies about me badmouthing you and bullying her? Aren't you upset with her for what she did? I asked. My mother-in-law avoided my eyes and stayed silent. Why won't you say anything? I asked again. I can't talk to strangers. I can't be friendly with someone who's not family, my mother-in-law replied, not even looking at me. My sister-in-law grinned, waiting for me to respond. Wait, where's my father-in-law? I've been the one supporting him during his time off. I've been the one handling finances in this house. I did it out of gratitude, but shouldn't he stand up for me now? Surely he'd be on my side. Hoping for his support, I looked at him, but he walked past me without a word and went into his room. That was it for me. I see. I've had enough. Oh, are you upset? I'm sorry. Honestly, I never liked you from the start. You know, being from an institution and all. Just don't regret leaving, my sister-in-law said. As if I would. Good riddance, I replied. I packed my things and got ready to leave right away. Only my father-in-law seemed worried because he relied on me financially. But even he didn't try to stop me or speak up for me. I was done with his indifference. Although my husband's work assignment was far away, I just wanted to get out of that house as soon as possible. I quickly got into my car and drove to him. I never talked to my husband about any of this. I doubt my mother-in-law told him about my sister-in-law coming back home. If he knew, he would have reached out to me because he knows I don't get along with her. But my husband never mentioned anything about my sister-in-law in his calls or messages. I never doubted my husband's behavior before, but maybe she's manipulating him, feeding him lies about things. Even now, as I go to him, he might treat me the same way they did. My heart was heavy, feeling suspicious even toward my husband, whom I trust the most. If he's siding with them, maybe divorce is the only option. That's how distressed I felt. When I arrived at his out-of-state apartment, he hadn't returned yet, probably busy since it was the end of the month. As I waited, my husband came in energetically, maybe noticing the lights. What? You're here? You should have told me you were coming. I would have come back sooner. What a pleasant surprise. No, just seeing your face, he said with a big smile. Seeing him happy to see me after all that happened at my in-laws' house, mixed with relief and humiliation, and I couldn't hold back my tears. What's wrong? Did I do something? Seriously, what's going on? He asked, concerned. It seemed my husband had no clue about the treatment I endured at his parents' house. I gathered myself, knowing I needed to explain everything clearly to him. I started recounting everything. How I've been financially helping his father who took medical leave without telling his wife. How his sister returned and was now staying at their parents' house. How she lied about me to his mother, turning her against me. How they treated me like an outsider, ignored me, and even ruined my belongings by leaving them out in the rain. Through tears and pauses, I poured out everything to him. Finally, I made it clear that I couldn't go back to that house ever again. And if he couldn't support me on this, I would want a divorce. My husband apologized for being too focused on work and not checking in on me more often. He regretted his family's behavior towards me. He assured me I didn't have to go back there or even talk to them again. Even if I forgave them someday, he was firm about cutting ties with his parents and sister. He also promised not to provide any more financial aid to his father. That night, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. The tension I'd been carrying melted away, and I slept peacefully by his side. After leaving my in-laws' house, I never went back. Commuting from my husband's out-of-state place wasn't practical, but I had already talked to my company about working remotely. My job didn't require me to be in the office all the time, and many of my colleagues worked from home too. Although I still had to visit the office a few times a month, some colleagues lived even farther away, so working remotely wasn't a problem. Living with my in-laws and dealing with my sister-in-law's bullying, I hadn't truly experienced married life. But now we could finally live like newlyweds. As I set up my remote workstation, as expected, my sister-in-law contacted me. It turned out that the day after I left their house was my father-in-law's payday. My mother-in-law usually takes out a certain amount and transfers it to their household account, but this time she couldn't. It was only then that she realized I had been helping them financially during my father-in-law's time off. "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were covering the living expenses?" He asked me not to, saying he didn't want you to know, so I kept it to myself. Anyway, we're running out of money for living expenses, and there's no one to cook or do laundry. The place is a mess. As his wife, you need to come back and take care of these things and send money quickly. How heartless. I already told you, didn't I? I have no intention of going back to that house or being treated like your maid. Why should I help people who hate me, ruin my things, and treat me like this? Aren't you his wife? Without your help, we can't pay the bills or even shop. That's exactly why I'm saying it. I'm an outsider, so it's none of my business, right? I hung up, ignoring my sister-in-law's complaints. She and my mother-in-law kept bothering me with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Even after my husband returned from work, they kept calling persistently. When my husband finally answered, he told them firmly, "I will forgive you for how you treated her, and I'm not sending her back to you. I'm not coming back either. I don't see you as my family anymore. Leave my wife alone, or you'll regret it." Considering my sister-in-law adored her brother and my mother-in-law heavily relied on him, they were probably shocked. A few days later, I got a call from my father-in-law. He said living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was getting too hard, and he begged me to continue the financial help. I'm grateful they accepted me when I married, despite growing up in an orphanage, but they didn't support me when I needed it, despite all the financial help I provided. I don't owe them anything. Why should I help those who joined others in ignoring me? I'll never assist you again. And with that, I ended the call. Later on, my persistent mother-in-law and sister-in-law shamelessly showed up at my workplace. Since I was already working remotely and had a bad feeling about them, I had informed my company about the situation. Security was alerted right away. They caused a scene, demanding that the company make me send money back home. When my husband heard about it, he said, "Report them to the police." My colleagues were supportive, saying, "I can't believe you had to live with those people. Focus on your remote work with your husband." As for my in-laws, my father-in-law's health declined under the pressure from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he eventually quit his job. My sister-in-law tried to return to her husband's family, but he refused to take her back. The town quickly learned about her drama at my workplace, causing an uproar at her in-law's place. The real reason for their fight was her affair, and this incident added to their problems, leading to an immediate decision to divorce. Left without a home, my in-laws and sister-in-law moved to a cheap apartment, managing with part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, we're finally enjoying peaceful days, feeling mentally and physically fulfilled. Recently, we found out we're expecting a child, and we couldn't be happier. We're eagerly awaiting the day we meet our baby, cherishing our time together.